Let's have a look at how we get portfolio management into an organisation through the eyes of MoP. So we thought we'd recruit Dr. Evil and Mini-Me to help us with this, as they're always into big things and dominating the world. And let's be honest, when you're implementing portfolio management, you are starting to kind of take over the world in the organisation. So what MoP says is there's three approaches that we can take. First of all, there's Big Bang, right? Which is, I'm guessing they mean bring an army of consultants and additional staff in to actually build this huge structure called portfolio management. Well, the truth of the matter is there is a wonderful track record of Big Bang approaches failing and spending a lot of money. However, there needs to be a point where you actually invest in this. So there will need to be additional resources to come in to actually get this thing up and running. But I certainly wouldn't be using the word Big Bang anywhere to describe what it is you're about to do, because it will frighten people off. The next option is ad hoc. Now, with my P3M3 lead author hat on, whenever I see the word ad hoc, I think of the associated word heroic and chaotic. But I think what we're talking about in MoP terms is a gentle approach, or maybe an opportunistic approach, where we start to see where added value can be taken on board, and we just adopt some practices around that. The truth of the matter is, if you take an ad hoc approach, you probably won't get very far, because there'll be bits and bobs all over the place. So really, we wouldn't advise that either way. So from a MoP perspective, the only other option they're offering us is evolution. So evolution is where you kind of gradually embrace the portfolio approach. And a key word for me in implementing portfolio management, the same way as it was when we wrote MSP, we didn't talk about implementing MSP, we talked about adopting it. And it's the same with portfolio management. Your organization will have most of those processes in place in some shape or form. So what you're looking for as part of the implementation is to adopt and adapt what's ever there to start to show the value of portfolio management as you go forward. So MoP also talks about a number of implementation steps. So let's have a look and see what they are. Firstly, we need to have senior management commitment. Yep, unless the top tier or whatever it is in your organization in which you're implementing this is on board, you're not going to get anywhere. And apart from anything else, you're not going to get any money to do it. So there is a softly approach, but it needs, and it may to some extent come in under the radar a little bit, but it needs sponsorship and support. So you need a senior sponsor saying, this is the way we want it to be. Very important to set some criteria for success, for expectation management, if nothing else. If people are having to do work in a different way or do more work, or are suddenly seeing lots of other reports and information come in their way, they need to know why. And you need to set out what the criteria for success is. And one way of doing that is kind of setting up priority areas to be included in the portfolio, maybe ICT projects, property projects, high risk projects. This is something we've seen in other organisations where they only really adapt their high risk projects into the portfolio and they let those lower risk ones flow on their own. Target quick wins. If you're spending money and inconvenience people, you've got to show that you're achieving something. And a quick win, honestly, the best quick win you can find is going to be a very expensive project or program that's going down the tubes. We worked with one client that found one of those, immediately saved some millions of pounds, and that got the top tier of the organisation on board because they didn't realise how much risk they were running and how much exposure. So that's the ideal quick win, but not everybody gets that opportunity. So maybe you can actually save work. Maybe portfolio can make life easier for people, not harder in some of the functions. Adapt and adopt what already exists, which was something I said on the earlier slide. Yeah, you're not going to change the way finance works. You're not going to change the way ICT works. You're not going to change away some of the areas that already deliver projects, maybe property or engineering or construction already deal with. So you're going to need to adapt how you work with them and make the change as minimal as possible. This is particularly around information. When you're sucking information into the portfolio to do your reporting, the least inconvenience you cause them, the less the chances of their resistance. We need to be basing it on continual improvement. Yep. So you're not going to get it right first time. You can get it as right as you can first time, but it doesn't mean say you'll get it right first time. And it will evolve. The high performers have been evolving their portfolio management. You know, we're now in 2020. They've been doing it for 10, 15 years now. So if you're only just on that first step, think in terms of a 5-year continual improvement plan. And you're more likely to get senior management commitment to that than some big bang, we're going to change the world in 6 months and it's going to be great. You know what I mean? So there we go, continuous improvement. This isn't one that's in the MoP guide, but it's one that you're getting free of charge from Aspire on this, which is robust information. Programs and portfolios are all about information management. And if you're trying to, and when you start reporting, you need to have accurate information. And the big problem you're going to find is that it's not there. I'll have loads and loads of data, but they won't have, and you've got to take that and turn it into information. But if the portfolio does what it's supposed to do, which is help decision making, it's got to have the right information, it's got to be accurate. You really don't want to be sat on portfolio boards with people saying, I don't recognize these numbers, which could come in terms of finance, in terms of performance, a whole range of things. But people have got to trust what you're saying. So I think in any future version of MoP, we're going to have robust information, I hope. And you've got to show evidence of progress. You know, see, we've already talked about targeting quick wins. You've got to show them you're actually helping those projects and programs deliver better. You're helping the performance of the operations to stay stable. You're actually showing that the benefits are coming in. So those are the kind of things that you need to prove to keep that senior management. Okay. So quickly moving on to sustaining progress. All right. So you've now implemented or a portfolio management. Let's think about the things you need to do to sustain the commitment and interest in what you're doing. So firstly, we need a single and complete view, often called the one version of the truth. All right. So actually, we don't want to see different groups reporting in different ways. We need to see consistency of format and the way it's working. And then you can show you're having some impact. We need to have a delivery plan. One of the problems with implementing portfolio management is the current portfolio is still rolling. So you need to get your single view of everything that's going on, and then you need to bring coherence to the plan of what's going on. Now, at the moment, there probably isn't a coherent plan. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Each project will have its plan. Maybe a program will have a plan if you're lucky, but actually those plans will be constructed in different ways. And so you need to kind of consolidate this sort of stuff into this high level overview. That's why we need a single complete view of what's going on and a plan that shows that progress and when things are going to happen. Next thing is you need to understand how it all fits together, because what you'll assemble in your single and complete view is a jigsaw puzzle where the bits probably don't fit together. So as you put them together, the key to that is dependencies. How do these puzzles fit together in some sort of organized way? Then we've got to think about the performance the changes are delivering. Look for some projects and programs that have already delivered. What did they achieve? How did they compare to their business cases? Because we need to understand the baseline for performance and the baseline for forecasting. So if those projects didn't deliver their promises and their benefits, then we need to understand why. And then you can build that into the forecasting, and you can build it into the approval processes. So as the new projects come up with their business cases, trying to make the same claims, even offering to take the benefits that have already been delivered elsewhere, a key part of this, you can start tracking performance and you can start better improving the forecasts. You need clear governance. So the portfolio has got to sit within the wider governance of the organization. So being clear, what authority does the portfolio have for making decisions compared to the line management and the functional management that's already out there? How does it fit? that's a real nasty and tricky thing to have to sort out. But if you don't, we'll end up falling over ourselves. And some clients we've seen is the simplest decision goes through 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7 governance boards. What are they all doing? Yeah, they don't, all they've got is they've got a right to contribute. They don't have a right to make the decision, but it's easier to pass the buck around. And that comes about from the lack of process, because what you really have to be careful of, that you don't start plugging in committees to replace the fact you haven't got process. And that is such a common error. So we need to then have some common standards for investment. So if you've got business cases coming up, why should business case A get approval over business case B? These things are going to be discussed when we move into the later stages of the MoP book and the kind of defining and delivery stages, where you're setting priorities and you're deciding how you will give those approval and how you'll vary those priorities. So standards for investment. Otherwise, you're going to have a whole battle royal about why has this been improved and hers hasn't and all that sort of stuff. So you need to be transparent about this. And then we've got the link of releasing funding to gates. So an absolute nailed on thing that you have to put in place to sustain process is stage gates for projects. Because if you don't get stage gates in, you've got no way of controlling them going forward. Now, the ultimate way to make that work is link their funding release to those stage gates. So if they come up to a stage gate in a chaotic manner, they don't get the funding and they have to go back. This is one of the flaws in the way people put stage gates in. Yeah, if they don't link it to funding, it won't basically work. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some useful insight into the strategies for implementation. Yeah, I'm not sure big bang or ad hoc are really going to work, but you do need to resource it. Yeah, so we need to evolve and use what's there. And then we've talked about the implementation steps. Well, in truth, I think you're better off talking about adopting rather than implementing. And then once you've got the thing rolling, how do you sustain progress? Okay.